them, the president of the university called them warriors, at least the men's team, but the women's team was too, but now they're all done for the season. But they went into the semifinals, so that was pretty good for them. And hopefully the men's team can do well. Our kids in California, we have 2 kids out there, they're watching it.
So Sophie has started recording. So if people could, if you're ready to turn your camera on, Cindy, we can.
How do I do that? I need Sophie.
With a little
tell me.
little video camera down the left-hand corner.
Oh, a little video camera.
Next to the microphone.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, okay. It's up in the top right on mine.
Oh, okay.
They're all
Bigger.
different. Takes quite a bit for me to try to figure all this stuff out.
Understood. Understood. Well, I think we're all here. Pat, is Dave close? Okay. So if we're ready to get moving, I guess we'll start the meeting. Roll call shows that all, including just Dave's chair, is there, so I know he's coming. So that all members are present. Did anyone have anything they would like to add to the agenda? No, so that's good. Anything you want to take off? And that's your prerogative as well, so don't forget that. Did everyone get a chance to take a look at the minutes from the January and the February meeting?
I don't think I completely got in there, unfortunately. I was trying to read it on my iPhone and it was so small, such small print.
Yeah.
I have to maneuver that new setup. I have to learn to maneuver that.
I reviewed the January in depth and then spent about 5 minutes on the February one, and both looked correct to me. So I would move to approve the minutes.
Does anyone have any suggested edits, issues with any of the minutes for either the January or February meeting? I guess hearing none, we do need to vote on Jessica's motion. We need a second, actually.
Second.
All right, I'll do a roll call vote on the approval of the minutes as Jessica has moved. So we'll start with Matt Ewing. Tim White.
Yes.
Cindy.
Yeah, I have to say I did not completely read them, so I don't want to comment or vote.
Jessica Leahy.
Yes.
Dave Thompson.
Yes, he read them.
Okay. Is he okay with them?
Yeah, yeah.
And Pat, do you have any comments?
Nope. Look
Okay.
good.
Motion carries. Next thing on the agenda is tree evaluations. I have none pending, so and everything with the tree warden report would be nested in the next 2 items. So if you're okay, we can skip right to that. So the next item would be review of the revisions of the vegetation ordinance. Did everyone get a chance to look at that? The one I sent out last week? So I think I captured most of the comments from the meeting before, but and the one thing I really was looking forward to getting comment on was the first piece there. I didn't get too wordy because I thought if you guys wanted to add some, you could, or if you think keeping it concise like that works, then that works too. So I'll open it up to comments from the board.
Well, I noticed in the revision and the added preamble that you were concerned, you called it rather direct. And so I was hoping that you could talk more about kind of what worries you about it being so direct. I wasn't particularly bothered by it, I guess. We are concerned about forest health in the entire community, but in particular the public trees. So I don't know. I mean, what's wrong with being direct?
Well, I would prefer it to be as simple and as direct as possible. And that's usually how ordinance language is written, but I didn't want anyone to feel like this has to be the way it is. I think the way it is works pretty well. So but that's really up to you all.
I thought the preamble was well written, Rob. I appreciate your breaking the white space.
We agree.
That's the hardest thing.
Okay.
I guess I'm still torn about what should have such a large section on Dutch elm disease. So you did exactly what we talked about, which was we'll add this preamble that says we're worried about forest health, and this is guiding principles for all things. And here might be some examples, and then we have the Dutch elm one, but it still feels like an awful lot on Dutch elm disease. So I don't know. I'm a little conflicted about it.
I concur. I would suggest rather than prevention of Dutch elm disease, just say something along the lines of addressing forest pests or forest pests and diseases, and as addressed through, and I can't remember the term that was recommended for them, not an amendment, but an attachment, and pull the Dutch elm disease language specifics out. And then it also opens us up to add things like emerald ash borer or hemlock woolly adelgid or anything else.
Yeah, so one of the things I thought of what might help make the ordinance read a little bit better was to switch the articles so that when you first read the vegetation ordinance, it would essentially start with the language that is Article 3, which establishes it sort of establishes the structure of the way we handle things. And then Article 2 could be where the preamble reads. Then I just kind of wanted to, it may make sense to remove that whole Dutch elm disease thing, make it a policy adopted by the town that actually is that is given its authority through that comment about the preamble. So I was going to I wanted to get your feeling on the language and how you felt about that. And I agree with you. I think that the Dutch elm portion of the ordinance sort of feels like the headline when it really should be a subset of the actual ordinance. So I was going to once we got, a general consensus, I wanted to take this to Sophie and kind of get her input on, because she's far more versed in the way ordinance should read, and kind of get the thing organized into a final draft that we would actually ask council to take a look at. But I agree. I think that there's a little more work to be done there for sure in terms of organizing the way it reads.
I like that idea of maybe writing something general and then pulling the Dutch elm disease out as a specific policy, so separate from the ordinance. I think we should also consider trying something where Dutch elm disease is replaced with something more generic or broader, like tree pest and disease. So you could have something like prevention of tree pest and disease impacts, and then the statement of policy could change to, it's hereby declared to be against the public interest for any person, firm, or corporation owning or occupying land within the town to grow, plant, transplant, or maintain on such land any tree infected with a forest, I don't know, you need that adjective, right? A tree with a state regulated tree pest and disease or something like that.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think if you did almost just sort of go through there and everywhere it says Dutch elm disease, change it to any pest or disease infested piece of vegetation, you'd almost have it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and then I think it triggers things where like maybe, I guess the detection part, where we allow entry onto private lands, so that this is the section 38-32 detection. I just get a little uncomfortable with that in general. And so and then it would be when we change stuff over to a tree pest and disease in the general sense, we might say something like, oh, well, that's actually, we don't agree. We agree for Dutch elm disease that we should have strong regulatory or entrance powers onto private land, but not for all tree pest and disease. So then maybe we would eliminate that section.
Yep, that makes sense.
I think you have to remember that when this was written, Dutch elm disease was a big deal. And that's why it's there where it is. And
Yeah,
I agree. We got some other pests now that put it elsewhere. Makes sense to me.
okay.
But I don't know really how to choose between those two options. I think pulling it out into a policy is pretty reasonable. And I think also changing it to a tree pest and disease terminology could work too. So maybe that's where Sophie comes in, and kind of gives us best practices and kind of, that level of advice.
Yeah, well, I think my apprehension about just completely removing it was the part of trying to keep the structure of how the ordinance should read for any disease. So I think actually doing it that way and then addressing some specifics that are in there would actually work really well. So if you guys are okay with that, I'll draw it up that way first. And if we just decide to remove it, that's not a problem. And then, because we got as many tries of this as we want until we're comfortable with it. So.
I also think that's a great idea about restructuring it. So I didn't actually spend any time thinking about what the right order is, but I could see where you start maybe organizationally with the tree warden, the tree board, and then duties makes a lot of sense. So moving the Dutch elm disease, which will be the new prevention of tree pests and disease section, and I thumbs up on that idea.
I agree with what you've been talking about. I would ask when you do the next version is to make it a completely clean version and take out all of the suggestions and comments and edits so that we can just read it fresh
Sure.
and clean. But I really like the discussion and agree with the suggestions. And I think when we see it all in one place, it will be a much improved document. Bring it up to date. And I think to Dave's point, I think it's valuable to have the Dutch elm disease in there as well. It reflected the time and it did its job.
In the preamble, I mentioned, just for example, a couple specific, is there any, I think right now when you think about pests, to me, the first two that come to mind are the brown-tailed moth and the emerald ash borer. For diseases, is there anything you guys would suggest I mention? Pine needle blights there, but are you comfortable with what I listed there? I mean, it's just an example of something we might look at, so it doesn't have to be specific. But.
I think the items you have listed work.
Okay. All right. I guess if we move on to what is currently Article 3, I did a bunch of sort of administrative stuff and defined the public right of way a little differently. I do have a note in there that there's a distinction between a DOT right of way that's within the urban compact and out. So I don't want to, I got to check that to make sure we don't muddle responsibilities, because right now in a state right of way outside of the urban compact, which is essentially west of I-95, Maine DOT still holds responsibility for tree maintenance within those right of ways. So I got to be careful that we don't cross a line that we don't want to cross. So we need to put something in there that defines a right of way that the town has maintenance responsibility for. It may be as simple as saying that, I guess. But,
I think you might
anyway,
have it.
I gotta make sure I find the right language for that, which is why I put that note in there. That was more of a note to myself than to you all. But I noted that it doesn't say anything in here who decides who the tree warden is, so I added that in as it's a council appointed position. The tree
So-
board, so we talked a little bit about the half thing, so I added some language in there about, I said at least 3 members have sufficient technical background in arboriculture, forestry, or other natural resource related fields. Does that sound what, like you were? And I couldn't remember
Yes.
if it was 3 or 4.
Sounds like us.
Yeah, so
Well,
it's-
it's hard to have a half of the board when it's 7 or 5 members. So, or 7, anyway, it's hard to have when it's an odd number. The question that I have is, with a quorum being 4, if there's less than a quorum of people getting together, does that constitute a public meeting? And you think it's silly. The reason I'm asking is Pat and Dave are my neighbors. So if we get together, do we have to actually pay attention to not talking about tree board, anything with the tree board, which we're professionals and we can do that, or
So,
It-
and if I misspeak, Sophie can jump right in here, but
I trust she will.
it's understood. You can gather together as long as you're not talking about the way you plan to conduct tree board business. You can get together and talk about anything you want. You can talk about trees if that's what you want to talk about, but your conversations of 3 or more board members together at once, if you talk about tree board business, that's when you cross the line.
Okay,
So you
As
could
long as
all
it
go
wasn't-
out to lunch if you wanted to and
excellent.
talk about how awesome the town of Orono is and do all that, but as long as we didn't discuss, how we were planning to conduct some form of tree board business, then we'd be okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that was very confusing to me, the last meeting. I was trying to deal with that in my own mind about how, if I get together with any of you, how I would be able to, whether I could talk about anything with a tree board or not. So that's a better explanation. I think I understand it a little bit better.
Yeah, what you can't do is have a secret meeting with Pat, Dave, and let's say Tim, and you decide to, decide who,
Decide to clear cut Main Street.
yeah, decide that you're gonna all
Okay.
vote for the same tree evaluation and then
Okay.
come to the meeting, and not disclose that.
Oh,
Does that
all
make
right.
sense? It's,
Yeah, that
yeah.
does. Yeah.
You can talk about how much you enjoy your work with the tree board. You can talk about
Rob's a great
stuff like
guy.
that. You just can't,
He makes good cookies.
right, you just can't make a tree board decision outside.
Okay. All right. I get that. I get that.
Yeah, I've just been applying a practical rule of the decisions we make need to be transparent. So we should be doing it at a public meeting or on a recorded Zoom call. And just
Yeah.
having it well documented. And if we're having secret meetings, then that's obviously not well documented and the public doesn't have a chance to see and listen to us conduct our business.
I see. Okay.
So the boss just chimed in and says that I'm wrong. The town council does not appoint the tree warden. Apparently the town manager does.
Oh,
Which I'm fine with. So I'll
Oh.
change that.
That
Solid.
gives you like 5 less bosses. That's probably a good thing.
But she made me I have a few hats, so I'm the tree warden and the road commissioner and I forget what else, but anyway. Okay. Are we good with that language in terms of, and did we want to recommend 3 or 4 of those members be
I like-
technical background people?
I like 3. I think that's
Okay.
a good number, and it just allows for more diversity on the committee, but you'd still have 3 people with some tree or natural resource specialty. It can always exceed that amount, right? We could have everybody
yeah.
have it's just a minimum, and I feel comfortable with 3.
Mhm.
There've been times in the past when we had a hard time getting 3, I can tell you that. So I'd leave that at 3.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point.
Okay, and then I added section C, which kind of defines officers for the board, saying that you as a group will elect a chairperson from your membership, and allows for a vice or assistant or co-chairperson and a secretary, and you could create other officers as you see fit. So if we needed, everybody could have an office if you guys wanted to, so.
I'll be
Is that-
treasurer since
that
we have no
doesn't-
money. I can probably actually balance that checkbook.
Yeah, I didn't put the treasury in there because I didn't see it would be appropriate. But. So that was that part where I think we talked about that in the past. If you guys are comfortable with that, then. Again, the tree warden is a position appointed by the town manager.
Mhm.
And then the only thing I kind of reworked with any significance was in the tree protection, because we wanted to kind of stay away from specific requirements like you must use snow fence and be more results based with what it said. So I tried to work that. And I changed stone, brick, soil, concrete to just one general construction debris statement.
Did we skip over the permit section?
I did.
There, 3855. It looked like you wanted our input in there.
What did I ask for? Oh, yes. So in a circumstance, right now, the way it can work under the ordinance is that if the tree warden identifies an issue that needs to be addressed in short order before the next meeting would be scheduled, which could be as long as a month away, the tree warden can act with, after having a conversation with the chairperson of the board. So these circumstances would be few and far between, and they would be emergency related response, something that comes to our attention that poses immediate hazard, I would think as long as I'm keeping the board informed, and then of course, at the next council, at the next tree board meeting, I'd bring everybody up to speed after having already talked to the chair. That's how it works now. And if we're comfortable with that, we can leave it that way. But I think there was a little bit of discussion about that last time. So I wanted to kind of check back with you all on that.
I think just a notification after the fact would be helpful, just based on the timing of previous actions and how quickly people email us from the community with issues. I would like to know if you and the chair need to make an emergency decision. No, not even an explanation, but just we made a decision to remove this tree at this location. And then that way, if we do get an email, we can say, yes, we're aware of that, and I will have more information after the next tree board meeting. And so it's kind of a hassle to email us, but it wouldn't even need, don't even need details, just like the address and that something happened.
Yeah, I think in today's world, this kind of communication is a whole lot easier. I type 2 tree board and off I go, and in 5 minutes it's done. So I think that's easy enough to do. I don't have a problem with that at all.
So I would suggest, what says one or more of the following circumstances, and you have a 1 and a 2. I don't want to limit it to the point of keeping the public safe. It might be something other than that you have to make a decision, a professional decision, and take action to keep the public safe. So I don't know if we want to the following or similar circumstances, emergency circumstances. Possibly change it to 1 or more of the following or similar emergency circumstances.
Yeah, I think, I will tell you, I have the responsibility to make those decisions.
Yeah,
So
you've got the legal
I
authority,
have to
I'm
do
sure.
that.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So that's, yeah.
As the road commissioner and public works director, I don't really get a choice. The tree warden has to do something on the side here, but I'm going to make sure that the roadways are safe. So
Right.
yeah, I part of this, I think honestly, a lot of this is in here because they need to allow for the circumstance that the public works director is not necessarily the tree warden.
Yeah.
And so those two positions would need to operate in a way that would allow for the public works director to communicate to the tree warden what's going on.
So
it reads a little funny in this situation, but I suppose there could be someday a different circumstance, and we need to make sure we didn't lose that communication.
So could it be something like under the direction of the public works director, and you just happen to be the same or as decided by emergency action of the public works director?
Well, and actually, if it's true emergency and there's a tree like across the road or whatever, sometimes the fire department takes action first. So there's a little bit of.
Yeah, I just don't want to see you get hamstrung by it. And, and to your point of that it might be a second person, I'm trying to point out the natural order of decisions, the order of precedence. And I trust the fire department is going to act, in the public's best interest. Absolutely. And I trust that you're going to work in the public's interest. Absolutely. So
maybe I'll use that phrase and sort of consolidate some of those bullet points into a deemed in the public's best interest sort of thing under emergency situation or something like that. I'll try out.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll try to reword that in the next version for you. All right. So yeah, then section 3858, I kind of reworded that a little bit. Tied this street opening permit to that. That's sort of the connection between the excavation and the tree warden's evaluation of the trees as part of that approval.
And is it considered construction debris if it's fresh brick and stone? And
I would consider anything, that's kind of, I didn't want to limit it to stone, brick, soil, yeah, any kind of,
but if it's brand new, if they're about to build a building and they pile 6 yards of gravel around the base of a tree, it's not debris because they haven't torn something down. To me, debris has the connotation of being the remainder after destruction.
materials or debris.
That
That
works.
work?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
I wasn't gonna touch enforcement until I don't know if that necessarily needs to change at all. But I'll
I
have,
see.
that's, yeah, I had a question for myself on that in terms of,
I see
exactly who would enforce that.
Tim had a question over there in 38-61 exemptions about the public utility consultations and what happens with the information. Maybe Tim could explain that. Are you maybe muted, Tim?
Oh yeah, of course I'm muted. Um, So it's just how is it you can the tree warden determines, but what happens with that information? Does it get recorded somehow to say that you've made the decision based on the site conditions, or the decision was made based on the site conditions that it was unavoidable? So does that just get recorded on the street opening permit? Because
Yeah, I mean,
that was new
that's-
information when you described that process, Rob. So that works really well.
Yeah, I think the fact that the permit was issued to execute the project in a specific way implies that it was, but I can do a better job of noting when I make the approvals, I can make notes of those things. That's kind of why I added the street opening permit in there to, if nothing else, make sure that I stay mindful of that as I approve permits.
Yeah. Thanks, Jessica, for raising that.
Okay. Anybody else have any more questions about? So the plan would be for me to go back, do the next revision. I'll schedule some time to talk with Sophie about the structure of the ordinance and see where we can fit all this in together. And I'll bring a final draft to you all that I'll clean up without all the comments and stuff for you guys to look at. Because the goal would be, I guess, next time to take a look at it. If we're all comfortable with the way the language looks, then we would begin the process of formally revising it, which involves taking it to council. There'll be a public hearing involved and those sorts of things. So it's probably another 2 or 3 months before we would actually get it executed, but
If you're lucky.
right. So, okay, well, good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rob, for your drafting work.
All right, so the next item on the list is the open board position. So before we actually, I'm not sure that we necessarily need to talk about the applicants tonight. We currently have 3 applications that I put in there. But to be fair, I think a lot of people are just now seeing the announcement that came out in the Observer.
Oh,
They may
yeah.
have not seen it on the website or Facebook. So I think it would make sense to just keep collecting applications for until our next meeting.
Mhm.
It wouldn't slow us down because the next full council meeting is a week after our next scheduled, our April meeting. So either way, if you make a recommendation tonight or at our next meeting, it's still going to be on the agenda for council to approve in April. So
Mhm.
I don't know, it seems it's a decision that you all can make, but it seems reasonable to maybe allow for a little bit longer application period.
That sounds good to me. I'm super excited that we have 3 people already who volunteered, and I hope we can, even if we're only able to pick one, we should think about how to engage these people in our Arbor Day activities, the work with the schools. There's plenty of things that we could have. We could have a tree board auxiliary, for instance.
Yes, let's do that.
Absolutely. It's
But we owe people that might be retiring and not having another chance. Somebody else can take our place.
And really great applications too. We don't need to go in detail about the assets that these people bring to the table, but all 3 looked incredibly qualified, and we'd be lucky to have them.
yeah, I would say even with the current pool, you're faced with a bit of a challenging decision.
Very,
But that's-
very challenging across all 3.
Okay,
And to your
so
point, it's just opened up as far as people seeing it, so we could end up with even more qualified folk. So this
Right.
is very cool.
Something
Good place to be in.
Something we could do is to have 2 people like the planning board does
And don't.
that are adjunct members or whatever. They don't vote unless there's a member absent, and then they can vote. So that would give us a chance to get more people involved, and it would also give us a chance to, when you have a meeting and you don't have a quorum, well, you do 1 or 2 of these 2 people. Then it worked very good with the planning board. It's something to think about.
If that's a possibility, I would absolutely support that.
Yeah.
It
I
also
think it's
helps
a
with the
great idea.
longevity.
well, it would require you to revise the ordinance, so this is a perfect time to do that.
I know we're not going to do this overnight, but maybe
Yeah,
we need to
no.
revise the ordinance.
I think it's a great idea, and let me, I'll look at the planning board ordinance and probably rob some of that language.
Thanks for raising that, Dave. That's a fabulous suggestion.
Well, it's probably the only bright idea I've had all day.
Okay, well, I guess if anyone has anything else on that, are we good?
I have one thing that we probably need to contact Mr. Allen to see if he wants us to do anything. We didn't do anything last year with the 5th grade and the students for Arbor Day activities, but I don't know whether we could do this outside, so maybe we could do something.
It's May,
If you want, Pat and I can go contact him.
or Cindy can, she talks,
Yeah, I usually get in touch with him.
they usually talks with him.
That's Patrick Allen, the 5th grade teacher at ASA.
Right. Right.
Contact
Oh,
them.
okay. Cynthia will do it. Yeah.
I mean, I can find out if he thinks it might be something more feasible than it was last year. He might not even know yet, but maybe in another month he'll know.
Well, on the plus side, it's outside.
Yeah. And what the conditions are up there on the hillside too. I don't know with the construction, what's going on up there. If, I think they had to put pipes across there, but I don't know exactly. But we can find out.
Well, one of our applicants worked on that committee, so. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else tree board activity related that
I could give an update on the 2 University of Maine students working on the Emerald Ash Borer project, and I continue to meet with them weekly, and they're making forward progress. In particular, Ashley Martone has a draft interactive online map that I think shows a lot of promise and could meld well with future GIS applications and people's ability to look at things. And we're brainstorming, and they still have 2 months left to continue to work on their projects. So that's in the works. And I have not made any, I had mentioned that there was a request to consider a brown-tail moth brigade. And so that I haven't identified a student for that. So as that develops, I'll share that more, and then just continue to, if we want to do a updated public tree management plan or whatever, maybe in the fall or future, that we do have a incoming number of master forestry students. So that's our update. I haven't participated, but I also heard that on campus that they're thinking a lot about ash trees, and in particular in the mall, it has ash trees. So there's efforts going on campus related to trees of public value there too.
I have a student that lives in our apartment house, who just is doing graduate work on the brown-tail moth. And I'm not sure exactly, she just started in January. So she's very interesting gal, and maybe we can involve her, but if you have students directly, and I don't, she's not in forestry. So, but you know, we can see if something might work that way as well.
Super.
That's great
have seen
update,
the-
Jessica and Cindy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have seen the map, and it does look it's going to be a great start for sure. It's awesome. So, and there's still, there'll be guests for us at the May meeting.
Yeah, I think the question, we should decide maybe at the April meeting so people can think about it now. There's 2 students, and normally we would have them present for about 15 minutes each. And so I wasn't sure whether we wanted it to be a part of our agenda, maybe the beginning of it, or maybe a public presentation follow and then kick into an official tree board meeting. Or if we wanted it completely separate, and we could have our tree board meeting at 5 and then the student presentations at 6. So those are like the 3 options I thought of: have them start the meeting, have them be within the meeting, or have them as a separate but immediately following kind of deal. And I don't know what's best. So.
I think for me, either situation works. I kind of had envisioned it being something that led off. We could bring them in and just kick it right to them to make their presentation, and then we could go into a formal meeting right after their presentation. If that, it'll kind of, that'll be pretty much our agenda for that month, which is great. And I'm sure that their presentation will spur some discussion for us too after that. So
I like that idea, because sometimes they like to invite their families or their friends and colleagues from the building, and having a set time when they're actually going to present. And then also like the ability to exit. Not everybody finds tree board business as exciting or riveting as we do. So if we had them at the beginning, then there could be this mass exodus after they're done.
Sounds good.
Yep.
okay. Anyone have anything else?
Rob, could you stay on for just a minute?
Sure.
It's over. I got something I want to run by you.
Okay. Well,
Well,
great.
move
Thank
to
you, everyone.
adjourn.
Our next meeting will be April. Who's got a calendar? April.
I have April
7th,
7th.
5 o'clock. Does that work for everyone? I should be able to stick with that schedule.
These meetings do bump right up against the land trust meeting at 6:30. So You know, if we're getting done, it's what, 5:45 now, so that's not too bad, but if they ran over it all,
This meeting got
Well-
pushed by a week, so it normally would have been last week, Dave, because I looked at the same thing.
Yeah, if I stayed on my normal schedule, we would have met last week and you wouldn't have.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
well, that's fine.
That's
Right.
right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
good. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody.
bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.